What is the creepiest glitch in the Matrix you've experienced? I took a hard news soft news journalism class in college where one of the assignments was to write an obituary for one of my grandparents. The professor told us to write it on a deceased grandparent, but if all of your grandparents were still alive we had to choose one. In my case, all of my grandparents were alive. I procrastinated the assignment until the night before it was due because it seemed like a dumb assignment. Scramming for an easy grandparent to write about, I gave my mom a call and asked her for some basic biographical information about my maternal grandfather, who was still alive. As we were talking about my grandpa's career, my mom couldn't recall the name of one of the companies he worked at. She lectured me about waiting until the last minute to write the assignment because it was late, 10:30 p.m. my grandpa's time. However, she said she would give him a call to see if he was still awake and be able to answer that question once my assignment was due the following morning. When my mom called my grandpa, my grandma answered the phone in a panic. My grandma frantically explained that the paramedics had just arrived and were performing CPR on my grandpa because he had stopped breathing and passed out. My mom was able to stay on the phone with my grandma until they took my grandpa to the hospital, where he was declared dead. In the time my mom and I had been talking on the phone about my grandpa's obituary, he was dying out of the blue. At that, he had been otherwise healthy considering his age. We ended up using the obituary I wrote for that writing assignment as his actual obituary. Still freaks me out when I think about the timing. Edit. Context. So, before my husband and I were married we lived separately. He would come over and spend time then leave later at night like 11 or 12. He left one night out my front door which has 3 locks, a lock on the knob, a deadbolt, and what I call a hotel lock. It's a lock that you flip the long piece over onto a short peg, and then the door can only be opened a few inches. Well, he left and used his key to lock the knob and deadbolt, but I thought to myself I have to go lock the hotel lock. I come down and it's locked already. Absolutely no way he could have locked it from outside. Not long after 911, on a Friday, I got up to go to class and had one of those mornings. Broke a glass getting something to drink, tripped over something going to my car, was late to class due to a wreck on the way there. Not me thankfully. While at school we heard about a plane crashing. Something about the wings blowing off. Went to work, went home. The next morning my roommate wakes me asking if I'm skipping class today. After he convinces me it is still Friday I get up and go to class after noticing the glass I broke is not broke. On the way I pass the same wreck in the same spot. All day I wait to hear about the plane but it never happens. Ends up kinda a normal day. The next day they arrest the shoe bomber and I have wondered if someone rewound that day to stop him and somehow I didn't reset with it. A few months before my first car accident I dreamed about it happening. Everything from the sounds to the placement and the smell was the same. Thing is, the girl driving tried to get me to find a different ride because she didn't want to do any extra driving that day, and after the crash I told her about my dream and she said she had the same one the night before and that's why she didn't want to drive. Freaky shit dude. I've had a very similar situation minus the other people also having the same experience at the same time. Believe I dreamed a scene before. Then all of a sudden a really strong sense of deja vu came on and next thing I knew I was having what felt like an out of body experience and I knew what was going to happen before it happened for the next 30 seconds or so to the most minute detail, as if I had actually lived that scene before. Still can't explain it. In college I delivered pizzas to make money. I had a delivery that should have taken about 20 minutes. When I returned to the store the manager asked me what had taken so long. I asked him what he meant and he pointed to the computer showing I had been gone for an hour and 7 minutes. I don't remember delivering the pizza. Only turning into the store when I was returning. Before anyone suggests aliens, no, my anus was not sore. I also don't drink or use drugs. 20 years later I still have no idea what happened. Something similar happened to my ex's dad in the Middle East during Desert Storm. He never talked about it much. Never talked that much in general at all, actually. But once he told me when he and his unit were on a patrol and he for some reason that I can't remember, went off alone just maybe 50 yards away from his unit in a pretty secure location. When he got back, everybody was in a panic and super relieved to see him. He swore up and down he had been gone for only 10 minutes. Turns out he had disappeared for 4 hours. He also swears he wasn't dehydrated or suffering from heat exhaustion. 10 years old, in grandma's front yard. She keeps her yard immaculate, award-worthy. It's dusk, family get together. Mom says toss me the car keys, so I do. My throw is short by finger lengths. I assume they landed in the short grass, but we never found them. That was 30 years ago. The yard has been mowed hundreds of times. The house is still in the family, still well taken care of. No keys, ever. This is late and pretty stupid, but why not? I was once showering, and after about 10 minutes in the shower I hear something ping, and hit the floor. I looked down, and saw a penny. I was pretty perplexed as you can imagine, but figured whatever, I'll keep it, as I imagined it could be good luck. I kept the penny in my wallet for a few years in a zip side pouch. I never really told anyone, because it was kind of pointless to talk a random penny I was superstitious about. So a few years later, while at a music festival, a girl in our tent woke up to a penny in her butt crack. We all laughed it off as having a wild night. However, I remembered the penny I had, and when I looked in the zipped pouch I was shocked to find it was gone. I told my friends and they didn't believe me. I think they threw that penny away too. TL. Doctor teleporting as Penny. This one is more silly than creepy, but once when I went with my grandmother to her friend's house, I was on the porch by myself with the grandmother's friend's cat, and the cat looked me right in the eyes and said the word meow. It didn't sound like a cat meowing at all. It sounded very convincingly like a human carefully enunciating the word meow, 2 syllables, in their most thoroughly convincing cat voice, like someone intentionally doing a very poor impression of a cat, as a joke. But it was perfectly in time with the movement of the cat's mouth and there was no one else around, so it had to have been the cat saying it. TL. Doctor met a cat that could talk, but the only word it knew was meow, apostrophe. When I was about 15 I was eating some cereal and accidentally dropped my spoon into the kitchen floor. I watched the spoon fall. As it hit the floor, it just vanished into thin air. I was shocked. I thought surely my eyes were playing tricks on me. It must have just bounced away and gone out of sight or something. I spent 30 minutes searching the kitchen for that spoon. I was honestly kind of freaked out. I tried to think of every possible place it could have gone. There weren't many places it could have ended up. I never found it. Edit. Fixed typo. Just today at the mall I saw at least 10 men with the same bleached haircut in the food court. I think the character generator is Brock. I was walking my dog. On his leash there is a little plastic attachment that holds his poop bags. I dropped the leash onto the ground. I heard the plastic hit the ground, but it turns out it ended up back in my hand. Imagine dropping something, hearing and seeing it drop, then somehow it's in your hand, all under a couple seconds. A few nights back I was wide awake in the guest bed at my place and heard quiet footsteps and then my wife say hey gently at the door. It seemed weird, so I got up to see what she wanted and she was fast asleep in bed. Before you ask, I was in a separate bed as I have a cold and have been snoring really loudly. My daughter and I were on the couch one day when she was younger and we heard the sound of popcorn from microwave. It wasn't a constant popping but 1 or 2 pops every 10 seconds or so. Then the entire living room filled with the smell of buttered popcorn. No one was making popcorn. The microwave itself did not smell like popcorn and the smell was only in the living room. I went as far to open the heating vents to see if there was a rogue bag of popcorn in there. If it was just the smell and not the sound or vice versa I would easily explain it away, but it was still one of the strangest events. I was sitting on my porch and had my debit card on the table in front of me. I went inside to get something to drink, patio furniture in sight and a 6-foot privacy fence around the yard. I also lived alone. Went back outside and it was just gone. I searched everywhere, inside and out, but couldn't find it. Nothing was withdrawn from my account, so 2 days later I cancelled it and requested a new one. 2 weeks later I went out to sit on the porch. I did this every day and the old card was sitting right there on the table. It just ducking appeared. There was nothing else on the table. It just was gone. And then it wasn't. Edit. Got a few replies, so let me clarify. I lived alone. The porch was screened. I literally took off all the cushions on the porch, destroyed my house. The table was your typical glass patio table, and I sat out there every freaking day and there wasn't anything on it. Then, 2 weeks later it was just sitting there on the table. Nothing was withdrawn from my account. I genuinely have no explanation. Was going down the stairs and went past my brother who was coming up the stairs. Said hi and he sort of mumbled back. Got downstairs and walked through to the kitchen, only to find him standing there. WTF. I've had a crazy similar thing happen. It was like 4 in the morning and I'm quite the night owl, so I'm headed downstairs to grab something to drink. The kitchen is separated from the living room by a dividing wall, but I realize someone is in there because I can see a person's shadow from around the corner. I think to myself, oh, Romad must be up already. Maybe he has something to do. So as I turn corner I say, hey, insert Romad's name. Good morning. And immediately feel like an idiot and get a chill up my spine because no one is in the kitchen besides me. I search the entire first floor of the house frantically and no one is there. So I head back upstairs and knock on my roommate's door. No answer, so I slowly open the door. Roommate is passed out asleep and doesn't seem like he is waking up anytime soon. There is no way he could have made it back up to his room that fast without running, and I would have noticed, because the floors are creaky, especially on the staircase. When he woke up in the morning I told him about what had happened. His eyes got real wide, and he turned pale. He looked me right in the eye and said, "That isn't a funny joke, don't duck with me." Turns out he had been having bad dreams all night about someone being in the house who shouldn't have been. But whenever he confronted the person he could never see their face. All that was, there was a black silhouette. Haven't had that experience since, and we agree not to talk to each other about it. I had an Android phone which had a Google Cards feature option that could notify you like 15 minutes to home if you were out. I thought this feature was annoying and useless, so I kept the feature off. After several months of no cards notifications, one night I'm at home and a card pops up saying 35 minutes to home, pinning me at a random intersection on the other side of town. Let's call it First Street and Story. I think that's weird. I'm not even way over there. I don't even know where that is. I've never been to that area. I go to my card setting to turn it back off, but it's already turned off. That's weird. Next night, exact same thing happens. 35 minutes to home from First Street and Story. What the? Still definitely not over there. Check cards feature, and the notifications are still turned off, so no idea why I'm getting a notification. Few days later, a friend and I are out running errands, and he misses his intended exit, so he takes the next one. Once on the streets, I ask, where are we? I've never been over here. Suddenly a car to our right tries to turn left and crashes right into us. Messed up the wheel to be unable to turn. So he pulled forward to the curb to call a tow truck. We had our kids in the car, so I call my sister to pick us all up. When my sister asks me for the location, I look up at the street signs. First Street and Story. Wasn't all that weird, I guess, but still. When I was a kid there was this house right before the entrance to my subdivision that was in this super deep valley. I remember calling it the house in the hole and thinking about how much it must have sucked when it rained and how great of a sledding hill the sides would make. Then one day we were passing it and there was no valley. It was at the same level as the road. I asked my mom what happened to the hole and she had no idea what I was talking about. To this day, I no longer live there. I always check when I drive past. Edit. It'll post a Google Maps pic in the morning. Edit 2. As promised. Como STUZW. I was getting on an airplane and a ginger yelled out for some dude Sebastian at a different gate. When I landed, a different ginger called out for a different Sebastian. A few days ago my wife and I were settling down to watch a movie in the living room. She switches off the light in the room. There is a light switch right above the sofa, and we start the film. A few minutes into the film we notice the light is on. It was weird, because we didn't notice it switch on, just kinda noticed that it was on. But we have no idea how long it was on for. We both clearly remembered that the light was switched off. It's part of our movie watching setup. We like the cinema experience. It confused the hell out of us both. Poured a freshly boiled water to a glass, walked over to check my email on the phone for less than 1 minute. I'm very sure, because the same song is still playing. Walked back, the glass of water is room temperature. I might just have had a stroke. Never checked. I have several times had multi-plane déjà vu, as I like to call it. Basically, I'd have a déjà vu moment about something, not to what, but then later I'd have the same exact déjà vu moment again. And it's always super specific things too. I swear to God, my mom told me my cousin died from an overdose a year before he actually did. So when she told me, and I replied back, quote, yeah, from an overdose, right, she was shocked that I already knew. I thought she was somehow messing with me until she showed me his death date. I still can't really explain that one. Edit. A lot of people are mentioning that he could have overdosed before and survived, making it that I assumed he died the first time. The weird thing is that I barely knew anything about this cousin. My mom's extended side is very big with 22 first cousins, 40 plus second cousins, etc. So there's a lot of cousins I've never met personally, and I specifically only remember being told about his drug addiction in context of it contributing to his death, since my family speculates it was intentional and not accidental. Basically, I never really knew much about him while he was alive. So while it's very plausible I could have heard about him overdosing beforehand, the way I remember it is very different. Memory is a fickle thing though, so who knows. My partner and I have the same vivid memory of something happening that never happened. We are both convinced that our friend was with us at another friend's wedding, and he fixed the sound system during the reception. Except the friend we remember fixing the sound system was not at the wedding, and does not even know the person who was having the wedding. But we both distinctly remember our friend not only being there, but actually saving the day. We sometimes catch ourselves talking about it, and once praised our friend for saving that wedding, and he was like, what? Whose ex? I wasn't even there. Apostrophe.